Stories. Today we are moving into the fourth archetype. So just to recap with all of you, we went into the first archetype, which is the creator. The second was the dancer. The third was the dynamo. And our fourth archetype that we're introducing you to is the lover. And this one is an interesting one because the previous ones were very personal and fixated on themselves. And now, as we've kind of layered through the different archetypes, we come to one that's more focused on the other, more focused on the overall relationship. It's a transpersonal, as we would call it, archetype, where it's fixated on the other. So a lot of personal archetypes are drawn to the transpersonal archetypes because they help them work through their stuff because they're focused on them. The biggest challenge to overcome is when we get to these transpersonal archetypes and they haven't done a lot of the inner work and the foundations, they're going to exclude themselves and they're not going to nurture themselves, and they're going to overgive to the other person to their own detriment. And so what's really important about the personal lines is work on yourself, focus on yourself and your goals, but then eventually you're here to include the other. And the same is true in the opposite for the transpersonal. It's like you're focused on the other, but you also need to receive. So if you're a great giver but not a great receiver, it's time to open up to that receiving, because love is given both ways. What would you say about beginning this new day with this new archetype, Bella?
This is an archetype that's been kind of a curse and a blessing for me, because I have it a lot in my design, and sometimes I feel like it's not really understood by the world, or the world is not really ready for this archetype. Like, we call it the lover, and sometimes you can look at the world and you can be like, oh, are we ready to stand for that? Are we ready to stand for love? And that, of course, is the more positive, healthy expression. It has sides that are not so positive. So really what Ashley was speaking about is that we started from the foundation, the first chakra, and that was the creator archetype. Then we went into the second chakra. That was the dancer archetype. We went up to the third chakra, and the more fiery, the dynamo archetype. And all these first three chakras are our lower chakras, our personal survival. So they are me, my survival, my hunger, my experience, my dance, like who do I want as a partner, my foundation. And now we are coming up to the next part, and how we look at it in the I Ching, for example, is like there's 6 lines, but there are 3 first, and then there are the 3 next ones. So we have as many me archetypes as we archetypes, and now we are in that first one that has a lot to do with the heart, but also a lot to do with expression. So it's an archetype that really wants to express its truth, but it's not only about expressing its truth, because it's not only about itself, it's really about coming across to the other. So it's even an archetype, we could say the lover archetype, if it speaks the truth and nobody's listening on the other side, it's gonna not speak anymore, because it's only really interested of sharing that truth. So we can say sharing is a very, very important word. Expressing is an important word. Getting across with its truth is an important word. And since it's the way that we speak about it in the Gene Keys is more about serving. It wants to serve the world. And I feel like that's a little bit, to say that kind of takes this archetype out of balance, because it means like it would only live for the other. But if we can see it in a way that it serves itself and the other, it's better. What I really like to say about this archetype is like, if it does what it loves, it's going to serve the world automatically, because when it does what it's love, it's centered in its heart, and from that heart centeredness, it is going to be of service for the whole. And this is the same thing we're saying about the creator archetype. It's that, like, this lighthouse that is inspiring for others. Well, this archetype is inspiring because it's heart centered and it speaks from that place, so it's going to create trust automatically. And when we look at kind of in a more professional sense, it's kind of going to be good at selling, because it's not trying to sell. It's simply just saying, oh, I'm using this, and this is something that I'm using. It's not the creator of it. It's just something that it has taken in its life, and it's speaking about it so that other people trust that it's going to work. So that's the kind of most positive, I would say, archetypes. Do you want to add anything to that, Ashley, or do you want to go into the shadow parts already?
So it's super interesting as I'm observing the way that we're entering into this conversation. It's very different than the other ones, because in the other ones there was kind of like an introduction, a setting the stage, like what's in it for you, where are we going, like here's all these workbooks and worksheets. And then the fourth archetype is kind of like, let's just get into this. Like, let's start. I want to start telling you my truth and convincing you. And the thing about the fourth archetype too is if you're going to share your truth with anyone, you need to make sure, one, it's like the right timing, and that maybe you've set the stage, because you're trying to bring to get that truth, that heart, because you've done the first archetype, second archetype, third archetype, you're getting to the fourth archetype. So it's like, I've empowered myself, I've danced with another, I know I've had all these experiences, and now I'm saying, from all these experiences, this is what my truth is based on all of this personal experience, and I just want to share it with you. So it's almost like, and I have an open ajna and head and throat, and so I feel like I didn't even want to like go into this archetype is almost like taking over, like, no, let's just get right into it, let's start talking about it right now. So I'm observing this and I'm like, wow, it's so like ready to go, like let's just get down to business, you know. It's super interesting to observe that about it. And we like to invite the archetypes in every day. So today was definitely an interesting day. I wouldn't say that I was completely like, I'm in love with life. It was very emotional. And the heart is that way too. It's not just like, oh, solar plexus is emotions. It's like, no, I feel like if you bring everything into the heart is the great transmuter. And so you have to bring everything to it, because that's where you're going to refine and figure out, okay, what's my truth, and where am I going, and where is my heart at? But that includes bringing the thoughts down, bringing the emotions up. Like we're bringing everything, and it's merging into the heart. And so there's a lot happening in here. And it's not all like romance and lovey and all that. It's like there's a lot of stuff that happens within the realm of the fourth archetype. Wouldn't you say, Bella?
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard Rudd, he says that this archetype is here to flood other people's heart. So it's really about that, and that often happens through tears more than anything else. And like you were saying, when we look at the layering, archetype 1 and 2 are kind of physical. It's like, you know, the foundation and kind of the physical of being together. And then 3 and 4 are all about, the 3 is all about that fire of like wanting to do, and the solar plexus. And the 4th is all about love. So we have that layer now. Both archetype 3, the dynamo, and archetype 4, the lover, are in that emotional realm, and they are here to feel, and they're here to kind of take us like on those, like you said, with the dynamo, it's going to have to be okay for the dynamo to cry and to laugh. And this is very similar to if it takes that I have to make you cry for you to open your heart, I'll make you cry, you know. It's like, that's what this archetype says.
Yeah. And even yesterday when we were in the dynamo archetype, towards the end, I started to feel the lover coming in. I'm like, oh, I can feel that. And I'm starting to say things that are more prone to like the lover archetype. So it's interesting. It's not that there's like this dead stop and like this boundary between them all. They merge, just like the way that you see the lines and the transits. It's like even the new moon and the full moon, you're going to feel it before it's actually here. So like as you're moving through and getting to the next archetype or hexagram or whatever we call it, you start to feel it. They start to merge together because intrinsically they're all one. And that's the whole purpose of this journey, is that what we want is we want you to bring in each of these archetypes and come into union. So like we have the chalice and we have the crown, and you can see how it has these areas for the jewels to fill in, which are all these different archetypes, because we want you to come into your king, we want you to come into your queen, and we want the king and the queen inside of you to come into sacred union. That's what the lover wants more than anything, is like, let's have your inner masculine and your inner feminine merging for that sacred union, and to actually love each other. And yes, the server archetype, like Richard Rudd would say, yes, they want to serve each other. They also want to love each other. And it's not just about like serving to the detriment of yourself. That's not healthy, right? It's you serving yourself, you're filling your cup, and then there's this overflow that you then give, and the overflow from the feminine too can give to the masculine, right? But the masculine is going to be able to create that foundation and give you that stability that you're needing to be able to be in your feminine, in your empowered feminine. You know, it's not the feminine that's here to just serve. The feminine's not a slave to the masculine, and vice versa. The masculine's not a slave to the feminine. So it's really about using these archetypes to dive into what's going on inside you as well. They're giving you pieces of the puzzle that say you're not completely whole here. You're still separating and segregating these parts of yourself. And that's what they're bringing up in your personal life. That's why it's so important to look at what's coming up in the mirror of your relationships, and to be able to be that objective observer. Because what happens when we bring in the emotions is it brings us right back down into our body and right back down into the conflict and turmoil. And it's really hard to see anything objectively because we're veiled by the emotions. It's like whether you're an emotional authority or not, it's like wait until the emotional wave is over for you to have clarity. Because that's what emotions are here to do, is to get you to see what you're not wanting to see. Like, oh, okay, now I'm feeling a lot. Now someone struck a chord, they pressed that button, and now this is just something inside of me saying, oh, I'm not whole, I'm not healed, I have a wound, I have a trigger, right? And it's not about being triggerless either. Like, I don't feel, if that's not the case, like, we're humans, we're all going to have, we came with this beautiful emotional mechanism within us that makes us flooded with different emotions. And that's where we're able, with experiencing the lows, that's where we're able to experience the highs, right? And that's, I mean, we're in separation, we're in separate bodies, and with that polarity and that duality, we're going to be experiencing highs and lows. So it's just about accepting every single part of you, not saying like, oh, I'm in love only, this is love, is everything is love. But that's not really the case. It's just the lover is very accepting as well. It's going to accept you and love you for who you are and as you are. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing that. But anyways, that was our worksheet. So if you are on the email list and you're receiving the emails, that was for day 4. If you scroll down, there's a bunch of contemplation questions as well that you can dive into and digest and just marinate in as you are wearing the costume of the lover archetype.
Yeah, and I like when we're choosing the sacred union, that's kind of like the only really thing we need is to meet from the heart. Then it can become a sacred union. So it's really, and it needs to be transpersonal. There has to be me and we in order to be able to have a sacred union. And the way that we see the sacred union is like beholding yourself first. So the same thing we said with the archetype, the dancer. Be fulfilling yourself first before you want to merge. So here is the same thing. Do what you love first. Because it's not by like hooking on to somebody else that you're going to be fulfilled and that love is going to solve everything. No, it's really about doing what you love. This archetype can really feel a lot of anxiety because there's something like if the heart is just a little bit closed, it can't really breathe, like as you're saying, can't be that accepting and that embracing. So just a little bit of tension in the heart is going to feel anxiety, and in that anxiety this archetype is going to make problems much bigger, and people are going to look at this archetype and say, wow, your life is great, and this archetype is going to have this tiny little thing that can really nag on it. So it's really breaking out of anxiety by relaxing, by doing what you love, by coming back to your truth. And then that anxiety can just dissolve easily, because people that look objectively on this archetype says that, wow, there are not a lot of problems, because there's also something when we speak about in a human design way more about this archetype. It's the networker. It's the person that connects from the heart and have a lot of friends, and everything is just a phone call away. So even if like things are happening, the house is falling apart, like for this archetype, it's just a phone call away to say, they probably have in their phone list like 3 different construction people. So and they are going to come because they know they can trust this person, and when this person when this person can help, it's going to help. So there is something here very important, and a problem is if there is trust that is broken for a lover, it can decide to close the heart, and it can become cold. It's very different from the second archetype, the dancer. They can be in aggression, they can react, or the third archetype can a little bit kind of use that fire too. It's going to just kind of be cold. It's going to maybe cry, but it's not going to scream at you. It's not going to react in that way. And that's also why people sometimes kind of don't understand that some things are hurting, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I think, and as I've seen it, I think that it's also, I think it's easier for the if their truth is not being heard, if they're not feeling understood, then they're going to, like you said, wall off. And it's like, I'm just going to experience this hurt inside of me because it's not like anyone cares. So I'm just going to do this. Or I don't have time for this. I don't have time to get here because it's like, I'll just put this to the side, you know, or I'll just process it internally. Cause it also doesn't want to like, what's it called? It doesn't want the other person to be affected by its own turmoil, right? If they're not going to understand it, then why would you even want to communicate your truth? Julia was saying, most of the time when I speak my truth, it doesn't land with people. Any advice on how to navigate amicably speaking our truth to people around us? I sometimes have to confront to get my truth across. What do you?
I'm not sure that you are. Do you have a, like, I'm kind of wondering what your profile is again, to be able to, because if you have second lines or fifth lines, you're going to be in that projection field. And then there's going to be more provocative just in how you come across. But if we would use a human design way, we would say there's no point of speaking unless you know that you're listened to. Yeah, 1-4. Oh, I love that profile. It's an interesting profile. I mean, for you, it's so important for you to be around the right people. Your soul is going to suffer when you are not around the right people. The right people around you, like I was saying, like if there's just a little bit of tension in the chest of a fourth line, it can't breathe. And that's your soul. So if there's like a little bit of tension and you're not in the right community, you're going to suffer. And with the 1-4, we also say it's like your environment is your friends. It doesn't matter if you are in what state you're in what country you're in. It matters who's around you, because these are people that get you. These are people you can trust. These are people you're forming deep relationships with, and that can be there when you need to breathe, when you need to release, when you need to tell them. So it's important for you to kind of even have that, like, can I breathe around these people? That's a great question for somebody like you. And otherwise, I would kind of a little bit say, don't bother, because there's a part of you that is going to be sad and shut down every time you have to aggress the other person to its truth. So that's, in my experience, it doesn't really help. And that one that you have is going to kind of go into its loner more than its anchor when it's not received.
Yeah, because her combination is the creator and the lover. So the more apparent is the creator, and the creator has to choose, I want to include you. I want to bring you to my heart. I want to include you here, because it's going to be doing a lot of investigating. It's going to be doing a lot of creation. And so, but there's an urge in its soul that says, but I want to do it with others. But I want that with others. And I think that I want to bring up kind of the way that these things build. Just because you are a fourth archetype doesn't mean I always have access to my heart and this and that. No, if the other lines are locked down, you start to make your way back down to the basement, back to where it's the creator and the investigator, and where this energy needs to be here, because you need to empower yourself. So you can't possibly be the lover archetype if you have these locks that are preventing you, these walls that are in your heart. So the way that we are able to open our heart is, first of all, it's about the strength of the spine. I speak about this a lot in the inner circle because it really landed with me, because I'm a fifth line. So I need access to my throat, and to have access to my throat, I have to go through all the other archetypes, all the other lines. Otherwise, when I am communicating, it's not landing at all with anyone. They're going to be like, where is this coming from? Or like, you know, it's diluted. The tone is not right. It's just wrong. And so the way that you do this is like, okay, the strength of your spine. Spine is everything. Spine is important, right? And that has to do with your core stability. So you're going to have to come into your body, into your soul, get grounded into yourself. And that's what gives you the strength of your spine, is when you're in your body, when you're saying, it's worth it to be human. If you're fourth line and you're like, I don't want to be here, I don't need to be here, you're not going to be in your body. You're not even going to have an open heart, because you're not going to want a relationship with anyone else, because you don't even want to be here. And if you can't love yourself, then how can you include the other and love them? So the strength of the spine is so important. That's saying, I'm empowered and I'm in my body and I am myself and I'm grounded. After that, we move to the belly. You have to have a soft belly. This is all about your Ka channel, your light channel. It's about the energy being able to flow freely through you. And so if your belly is tight, saying, I'm bracing for impact, I'm like clenching because there's trauma or PTSD or anything in the belly, the energy is not going to flow. It's going to stop at your sacral. It's going to be like, okay, we're going to stop here, you know, and because you don't feel safe. and then it'll just knock you back down to get empowered again, because you feel like you're at war, right? You're like walking like, oh, this person's gonna like nag me, or they're gonna yell at me, or I'm not free to be myself. If you don't accept yourself, you're not going to be able to be around anyone, because they're going to be constantly attacking you at your core, saying, I can't accept you. Well, that's because you can't accept yourself. So it's about getting back into empowerment again. Then you free up that strength of your spine. I'm empowered. You soften your belly, saying, I don't need a brace for impact. I'm open to the world. I'm open to the possibilities and the experiences. I'm ready for this. And then as you move your way up, so strength of your spine, soft belly, and now it's like, can you open your heart? Can you open your heart to life? And without walling things off, right? And this has everything to do with the conflict. How do you view when people aren't aligned with your truth, when you feel like someone's attacking you? It's like, can you be in your authority? Can you stay in your heart amidst whatever's happening outside of you, and just being open-hearted and saying, I know who I am. I know that there's nobody that can attack me or harm me or kill me, or I'm free to be myself, and I'm free to speak my truth. The moment you feel like you're not free to be yourself or be in your heart, you're not going to be able to get access to your throat at all to speak your truth, right? Because we have the heart, and the heart's taking in everything and saying, okay, I'm figuring all this stuff out. Here's my truth. But the truth is here, right? And it wants so desperately to bring it here and out. But it can't get here if it feels like no one's going to hear me, no one resonates with me, I don't accept myself. So is that truth even truth? That's what people are going to say. Oh, it doesn't feel like truth to me. That doesn't feel like it's your truth. I don't even, maybe it's your mind that's telling you this is what it is, but I can't even feel it, because it hasn't completely been embodied in you. It just stays like this. And it's like, this is my truth. And it uses its truth as like a survival mechanism, as a self-preservation mode. Like, here's my truth. And the truth can be, I'm a victim. And I want to tell you I'm a victim. Let me tell all the whole world I'm a victim, right? That comes from the victim mindset, or I'm so afraid, or whatever. If the lover is in its true essence and authority, it's just going to say, like, what is it going to say, Bella? I mean, you're the one that has the lover archetype. What would be like a universal, and I'm a fifth line saying universal, but what's something that the fourth line would say? What's the truth of the fourth line?
I mean, they don't understand me, and we can't be in communion. We can't have sacred union. And then there is like this deep sadness, and that sadness leads to numbness. And then when there's numbness here, like Julia was saying too, then it goes to the head, and then you're kind of trying to figure it out. And that can be probably both if you have creator archetype with you, or if you have the archetypes we're going to speak about the coming days that are also kind of disembodying, because it's horrible for a human being to be in a body without a heart. It's like, we kind of like, in one way it's impossible to be in a body without a heart, because there's nothing that's alive anymore.
You're like a zombie just walking around. It's like you're just I think that the thing is that if you're locked down in your belly and your spine, and you're like hunched, like somebody who's like disempowered is like, you can tell their like stance, it's like their gait is like they're walking like, I need to protect myself, and like you can't, like they're just clenching, right? And so they can't have access to their heart, because nobody can have access to their heart. So they don't even know what it's like, because they're in survival. And when you're in survival mode, you're not thriving, and you can't access that love frequency, because love is always thriving. Love is always alive. Love is always moving. Love is always like flowing. And love is unconditional too, right? Love is like, I accept you for who you are, and I accept me for who I am, and let's just like be together, even though there's like differences. The thing about the fourth archetype though is that it can get really fixed on its truth, fixed on its view, fixed on its trajectory, fixed on whatever it is, and then it's really hard when somebody comes in that's a little bit different, because it's like, well, do you accept me? Do you love me? Can you hear me? And if they don't feel understood or loved or heard, then it's like, then there's too much friction, and I can't be here, or they'll numb off, or whatever the defense mechanism is here.
Yeah, I saw that Robin in the Q&A was just asking about that exact one, having the 1-4 in the IQ. So here we have this archetype in the IQ, and that's where it can become a little bit about wanting to convince the other. And often it doesn't come from a bad place. That this I can say it from experience. It doesn't come from a bad place. It feels like, because the fourth archetype is here to serve the other. So it feels like if you just would get this truth, it would be so much better for you. But there is a little bit of an arrogance in that, right? So you want to convince the other of that truth because you feel like then the penny will going to drop, and then you can suddenly have union and everything is going to be beautiful. Because we have that, we really have. There's an idealist here. We have, it's really about that romance of like kind of like, you know, being able to be together, like seeing the same truth. And I think too, with having the 1-4, and you're saying you have it twice. So here we speak of Gene Key 1, that is about freshness and beauty. So here there's an idealism. It's about wanting to see beauty, like connected with another person's heart. That's like the idealistic longing. So when it's there, it's like the mind knows, kind of, it wants to convince that it's possible. And then I don't know where it's the other one is, but this is my evolution. So I know this, and it's like this longing and knowing that there is beauty, but then a little bit having so many things around you showing you that there is entropy, and entropy is kind of depression or darkness. And it's really in this activation, and I kind of get carried away, but this activation is about also understanding that there are moments of depression, there are moments of rest. We can't have that spark all the time. It can't be fresh all the time. It can't be beautiful all the time. I mean, on a higher level maybe it can, but as a human being on this earth, sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes we are not going to get our truth across. But instead of like frenetically starting to run away from that with the first Gene Key, or kind of like giving up, that's not what's more conducive for ourselves, I would say. So and also what you're kind of pointing at, Robin, is that sometimes we don't need to have an archetype in many places. It can be really strong in the place it is, and especially you having exactly the same activation with the same Gene Key, the same archetype in twice. That is, we saw that today with Ashley with the live reading earlier today, and we had a person that had the same twice, and that kind of would take over his life. It would block his emotion, and it would be his, like, kind of make the story of his life, the essence of his life. So I would absolutely say I understand you resonate with this, and look at the questions and answer them, because this is going to help you to keep that heart open, and to know that it's possible to have beauty and truth in relationship. That's what you're here to role model. That's what you're a spokesperson for.
Mm-hmm. I wonder too if, as I'm looking at the archetypes, and when you feel resonance because you're like, oh, you're like me, maybe you understand me, or maybe whatever, the fourth archetype maybe has this connection to the heart, and so a lot of things are about the heart. And so the reason it tries to convince, like you were saying, or tries to get its truth across, is because it knows and can feel when you're walled off, and it's like, if I just push a little bit more, or however I need to, whatever I need to say, however I need to say it, I know that if I get there and I like strike a chord, then the wall comes down, and then we can come into union. Because it wants more than anything, its fixed thing is like, how can we unite? How can we unite? How can we get there? And so it's gonna like poke. Maybe this is just you, and you have your provocation. You're like, I'm gonna poke until I get there.
But it sounds like Julia kind of is doing the same. Sometimes she doesn't, like, she does that in order to, so it seems like it could be the reactive kind of part of the fourth archetype.
Because I can definitely resonate with people who have fifth lines or fifth archetypes. I can hear it in their voice and their tone, like you did yesterday. Like, you can pick out if somebody is a fifth line or is a fifth archetype. You're like, I kind of hear that in you, you know. And so also, you know, when somebody is not completely being vulnerable or authentic or whatever it is, you can feel it in their tone. It's super easy to pick that up, because if you're sensitive to tones and frequencies like that, then you're going to feel that. You're going to feel the difference, because I think that you're also here to help other, I mean, especially as a transpersonal line, you're here to help other people, right? So you're going to be noticing things. So I don't know, I'm looking at that and investigating that. But then with the dancer too, can it recognize other dancers? With the creators, can it recognize other creators? Because it's so prevalent in you. You know yourself, so then maybe you recognize it in the other. It's like that namaste. You know, I can see that in you, right?
So if you go back, what you did yesterday, Ashley, I really love that. So when this archetype is not in balance, it's going to feel anxious and it's going to try to convince the other in order to feel safe again. We can actually see that if we speak about 3 me lines and 3 we lines, so the first line, the creator, it's in harmony with this one. So the first me line is together with the first we line, you could say. So it is about safety. It is about having that foundation. But here we have somebody who wants it with we. The first archetype is happy to just have it with me, but here we want safety with we. So it's going to feel anxious, and that's when it can be this kind of, it can go into the convincer and start to get its truth across in order to be safe together. And however, so that's the negative way of doing it, feeling anxious, feeling like you can't serve the world in the way you love to serve the world, going into that kind of convincing mode and feeling like you have to change something. Things are not beautiful like the way they are. And the other thing is when you can come back to your heart, come back to your breath, when you can do what you love and be in a more relaxed state. What happens, what Ashley was saying, this archetype becomes the nurturer. Because then when the heart is open and it decides to have the heart open, whatever happens, actually it can kind of go through and embrace things that not many archetypes can embrace. And it becomes the nurturer. Because even if the second archetype come there and like, it can just be there and kind of sit until that truth comes across, and then it can share its truth that's probably resonating at the level that is more heartfelt, and then they can have union. Or it can come and it can like embrace the fire of the dynamo, and it can be like, okay, or let's play, and then they play, and then the dynamo, it feels happy again, and then they can share truth. So it is the nurturer when it's in balance and when it can keep its heart open. So really the key word here is, can you keep your heart open even when it hurts? I mean, it sounds kind of horrible, but it is a little bit of that. And, it is a little bit of like kind of not giving the other cheek in a stupid way, but can you allow the other to kind of have their shadow without going into your own shadow? Because then union is possible. So this is the possibility and kind of the challenge for this archetype.
Yeah. And too, like we were saying, I feel like, okay, so you are a lover archetype, but if your heart starts to wall off, then you start to drop down and down and down, and you can get to the point where you're the dancer and they're dancing their shadow expression. You're like, I'll be in shadow with you, because that's the way that we can merge, is if we're in shadow together, and misery loves company. So I think that the way that I'm going to serve you is by meeting you at your level, but it's not about meeting anyone at the level that is destructive. Mm-hmm. The lover wants creative energy. It wants union, and true union ends up with creation, right? And so that's what it wants. That's the highest expression of that. But it can go down and it can meet you where you're at. I feel like we're all able to be shapeshifters, right? When something gets locked down, we move to the expression below it, just like in spiral dynamics. It's like you can end up going into the destructive path. That's how emotions work too, right? And we got to pick ourselves up and move the frequencies. And so I think that's something to mention too. I wanted to touch on too, because a lot we've been speaking about, closing your heart or walling your heart off, and something that can allow you to get into your heart space is like, if you just truly sit and just breathe into your heart, doing that like heart math, where you're just pretending like your heart has nostrils and it's like breathing in and out. You're consciously putting that breath and that aliveness and that prana and that energy into your heart. And if you feel like you're closed at all, I think something that could really help you work towards healing is if you like took a moment to just get into your heart and ask, do I have a wall in my heart? And if you feel like, yes, that's the case, or is there a locked door or closed door, whatever, getting that visualization could help. And then saying, okay, if I have a wall, what is my wall made out of? Is it made out of steel? Is it made out of diamond? Is it made out of wildflowers? Like, what is it made out of? Like, people are going to have all sorts of different materials that their heart wall is made out of. And the more you can be conscious of when it's up and what it feels like and what it looks like, you have to get really intimate with your heart and say, I want to know all of you, heart. I want to know all of you, soul. I want to know you. I don't want to be walled off from myself. I don't want to wall up to the world. Because if you start walling off to other people, you're walled off to your source, and to source, you're just walled off. You can't be selective about what you wall off to. The wall is around it regardless. And so you're still disconnecting from yourself. You know, it's like this one piece I'm going to preserve, but to do that, I have to sacrifice. I'm not going to know this piece. No one's going to know this piece because this is the last piece I have. And so we like lock the door and throw the key away, you know? And so that's what it's going to take is do you love yourself enough to come back to the heart and open all those doors and decide to take down that wall? Right? If your wall's made out of diamond, which is like the hardest material, the only way you're going to be able to break that down is through diamonds. And so what should you do? I think you should start appreciating the diamond of yourself and let yourself break down that wall, right? Because everyone's a diamond. Everyone has that diamond within them. That's their style. That's their uniqueness. And yes, it might have taken extreme amounts of pressure for you to understand who you were, to reclaim that diamond. It was like, everybody told me I was coal. Everybody told me I was shit, you know, and I couldn't be myself. And now with all that pressure, it's turned into a diamond. And now you actually get to see who you are. And you can take that diamond and like crack down that wall, make a pickaxe with it, like my kids in Minecraft, and just chop away that wall, and then it's done. But I think it's a constant choice. Even if the wall comes down, you can still put it back up. You have to constantly choose to live with the heart open. It's not oh, I'm done, I made this wall go down, this is so amazing. It's like every day you choose, and it's a commitment to keep your heart open. And it's going to be hard in the beginning, and it's going to hurt. But when it hurts, like Bella said, it's like, can you take a breath in? And that allows it to expand and allows the walls to just come down. I'm safe. I'm breathing. I'm still alive. You know?
Yeah, and I love your saying that. And also I love everybody who's on and help us to not forget anything. So Robin is saying, is there an element to the fourth? So what Ashley was just saying, breathe, like the air element. Here we went through earth, water, fire, and now is air. So this is that's really like we were saying to Julia, are you around the people where you can open your chest, where you can breathe in, where it feels there's no constriction to breathe? That's the air element. That's very important for this archetype. When there's no air, then they're not in the right community, not with the right friends. Kindness is another word we haven't mentioned. That's like, because sometimes love kind of sounds a little bit intangible, maybe even, but kindness, there is a kindness with this person. And you know, when it's kind of corner, it might feel like a politeness that isn't from the heart, but really when it's embodied, it's a kindness that's there, that's like it's natural expression of kindness. And then Don is asking, he's saying in HD, I'm a 6'3", but my IQ is the 15.4 in Gene Keys. And this is now again kind of today, and I'm letting it go there because I see that most of the people that are on here are human design or Gene Key people. So we're kind of like allowing that to come in. So the IQ is the conscious Venus in astrology. The Venus is all about your values. It's about what's important to you. So if you have a fourth line there, these are your values. Your values is kind of like more important in like than anything almost in your life. So it's going to be there. And then being a 6'3", values is the key word for the 6 line. So the more you come into your life, and that's 6 that has three phases of life. So more and more values are going to be important for you. So Venus is coming together with that 6 line coming into more of its role modeling. And that's what you're going from a lot of trial and error your first 30 years, then more discernment in your next 20 years, and then you're becoming a role model. And you're a role model where your magnetism is going to come, the magnetism in the 15 is going to come from being anchored in your heart. Like, you know, we only need these few numbers, and we kind of can see, what are you here for? You know, what's your message?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have the 15 in my radiant sphere, and I would say there is the 15 can get kind of quick and fast, and the whole thing is about slowing it down, because it's about hitting the Schumann resonance. And so it's about slowing down your mind, slowing down your life. And the way that you're going to extract that truth of who you are and what things are like is by you slowing down. And the 15 is also the gate of the love of humanity. And so what is going to shape and mold your idea of what humanity is like is what you've been through as a child, right? Was humanity good to you, or was it not? Were you bullied in school, or were you accepted? Like what did you learn about yourself and about humanity? Could you trust humanity to be kind to you? Or were you anxious about them attacking, bullying, or did you see it happening to other people? It doesn't necessarily have to be something that happened to you personally, right? But I mean, as a what was he, a 6'3"? Did he say 6'3"?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a 6'3", it's like you were a 3'3" at one point, so you were bumping into things, experiencing all kinds of trials and errors and possibilities all over the place. And so I don't know, maybe the world wasn't so great to you, and we had spoken to another person who had the 10 and the 15, and he went through a period where he hated humanity, and sometimes he still says, wow, so stupid, you're just so stupid. And I'm like, there's no compassion here. It's like you learn by taking humanity, taking that wound of humanity into your heart and saying, I accept you and I love you. You know, looking your bully in the eye and saying, like, I love you and accept you. I know that you're hurting and that's why you're hurting me, but I love you and that's okay. I'm just not going to let you do that anymore. My boundaries are that you're not allowed to hurt me. And even whatever you say isn't going to hurt me. I just know that you're hurting, you know? So,
And
oh,
I
and
want to
Julia has the
go
15 in
in.
her IQ too. So
Yeah.
Julia and Dawn kind of share that. That's kind of cool.
So I wanted to go also say, because this might be able to also help Julia a little bit, like the same thing we we're saying before. It is important for you to find the tribe. It can be a small tribe with 3 people, it can be a huge tribe, but to find your belonging. Belonging is a super important word. And if you have, especially in your childhood, the first 7 years, if you didn't feel like you belonged to your family, or there was something, you want to give that to your inner child. So important. Like you want to tell your inner child, I'm never going to make you have to be in a group where you don't feel you belong. I promise you that. Like, you know, big Bella is going to promise little Bella, I'm never going to do that to you again. And then so much of your heart can actually dare to open. Because when, especially when, if you have a lot of lover archetypes and didn't feel belonging as a child, that can like be there, and it's going to be in your cell memories, because under 7 you're too young to process emotionally or mentally. So really give your inner child belonging for the rest of your life, and then you're treating it well.
Yeah.
And
the first way to belong in a group is you have to belong to yourself. So really owning that for yourself and saying, even if you don't feel like you belong anywhere, I belong to me.
Yeah, that's super important. Kind of that I was saying before, be the creator archetype first. Go down to the foundation and make sure you are safe with yourself. Make sure you're safe with me, then you can be safe with we.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to mention before we are like feeling like we're kind of wrapping up, it's the sexuality, the intimacy that we've been mentioning the other days too. So here again, we are in the air element, and that can be fun funny to think like, what does that mean in sexuality? Well, here it is a lot of, it's a lot more subtle. It's a lot more about love. It's a lot more about that feeling of like, what can we be together in a union? And it's even something that I have seen when it comes to the kind of the shadow archetype, is to pay, or like pay or not pay the other by holding back. So if we had a creator archetype that can be sterile and be like, I don't want to plant anything with you, here we have even a little bit more tricky way of doing it. It's like, kind of, no, I'm not feeling like I'm sharing on a heart level with you, so I'm not going to share on another level either. So it can become cold, and it might even take some time to kind of, if you're in a relationship with a lover, to understand that something is wrong, and they're withholding their heart from you, they're withholding that warmth from you or that nurturing from you. So it's not going to be loud. So learn, if you are with a lover archetype, learn to read their cues. So if you see that they're cool, they're withholding something, ask them, what is it, like what can we do to bridge this wall or this gap that is in between us, so that they don't use intimacy and sexuality in a way that is kind of, hurtful. And to think about that nurturing aspect, that romantic aspect that's there, that can be probably one of the most beautiful things. And here I would say, if you're into the Gene Keys, you really get a lot of information when you look at the attraction sphere. I would say that, yeah, maybe about looking at your profile, you get, it's part of it, but here it's quite precise going into your attraction sphere, or even human design, kind of your Uranus can give you a cue about your creative sexual expression.
Mm-hmm. And I would also say, if you're recognizing the lover in somebody else that you love, the way that the lover would respond best is softness. It's not going to want you to get in there and force your way in there. It would just wall up more, right? It would just like close off. But if you're going to try to like open a heart, you do it with softness. That's the soft way about it. And it also wants you to approach it with integrity. And it likes to be romanced. It's a lover, for God's sake. It wants to be romanced. And so it's softness, it's touching soft, it's speaking softly. It's speaking to like if it's if it's hurt and wounded, then you speak to it like comforting and nurturing. You're not going to be aggressive and rough and be like, put your feelings to the side, like put your big girl panties on and this is what needs to. No, that's not going to be. I mean, you're just teaching them to be who they're not, and they're going to close off the part that's super unique about them is like their access to their heart and to their emotions and their softness and their romance and their truth. And so if they're trying to be somebody else, they're not going to have access to that heart anymore. And so even parenting a lover, they need your nurturing. They need to be accepted, and they need the heart-to-heart connection and the heart-to-heart talks. They need those conversations where it's like, I know that you can't really understand what your truth is, but let's like work through this together. Like, let's articulate your feelings. Let's go into this together, because I know that your heart is hurting and you don't know why and you don't know how. You know, because it's not just about a relationship with a partner who's like adult and adult. What happens when you bring in children to this? Right? Having a creator archetype, having a dancer archetype, having a dynamo, a lover, having all these archetypes as children. How do you nurture them? How do you love them? And that's what the fourth line, I feel like it is here to teach us how to love our children, how to love our children, how to love our partners, how to love ourselves. If you're going to learn anything, get into your heart and help bring forth the lover to help you bring love into all parts of your life. All right. Well, I'm let me see. Do we have any other questions or comments? I love you guys sharing in the Facebook chat and here. Did we get somebody?
Is there anything of it? I didn't actually share it on Facebook anywhere in the meantime.
Oh, I did. I shared it a couple of places. It looks like Lewis says love is a foundation. For sure, love is a foundation, because even when you go to the creator archetype, it's about loving yourself. You use love to empower yourself because you love yourself. And then when you get to the fourth line, right? First line, fourth line, it's about loving the other. But you can't love the other in the fourth archetype unless you love yourself. So even if you, okay, so when you don't have a lot of the lover archetype in your design or your blueprint, it's still part of you. You still have access to it. And even if you have none of it, say like you don't have any fourth lines, you don't have any lover in your design, that's still an area in which you're here to understand and develop. We're whole in all of this. At some point or another, you're going to be experiencing the lover archetype, right? And we're here to have relationships. We didn't come here on earth to just be single on a desert island, and those people, we don't even know what they're going through because they're not having any contact to anybody, right? But we came here for relationships, and we came here to know what that's like, know what partnership is like, and know what love is like. And that's why these archetypes build on each other, because we're getting to the point where you get to the sixth archetype, and the sixth archetype has a vision for the future and where we're going, right? But you build and you get to the heart, and then the heart is saying, this is what I want, this is what I long for, this is what love is. And then it begins to speak it out into the world, and then it begins to create, like to think about what's possible down the road as well. What kind of future are we wanting to build together? If the future is built on a foundation of love, what is that going to look like? Where do I see love that's not present, right? Where is love not around? And how can I share that love and flood that love in those places? Because if the lover archetype is about flooding other people with love, then it's going to go in all the places that need that love, right? If it's courageous enough to go there, if it's showing up whole, healed, and complete in itself, it will know that I'm going to bring my overflow to the people who need love the most, because that overflow would serve the people who have none, whose cup is empty. There's nothing in here. So they're going to go and pull in and attract to them the people who need love the most. And I think that's also what maybe some lover archetypes are already doing, is you start to attract people who need your love so badly, and you need to make sure that you're still upholding that integrity of love and not meeting them at their level of non-love and and woundedness and victimization, because you can dance the dance with the wounded dancer, or you can stay and uphold, you know, that open-heartedness and say, let's dance together in this way. And I'm willing to accept you and love you. Can you accept and love me? You know?
Yeah, and really remember that if you are struggling with anxiety, or yeah, any kind of like anxiety, or what's the other words, like even depression, I would say, because that's kind of what this line is, this archetype is a little bit prone to. Ask yourself, am I doing on an everyday basis what I love? Because this is kind of the price to pay, like when having this archetype prominent, like you don't really get to choose. It's like if you don't do what you love, there is a price there to pay. And it's really something you kind of sometimes have to learn the hard way. But that's something, whether you're in a relationship with this archetype or you have it, it's like you want to encourage the lover to do what they love, because otherwise a part of them is going to die, and they're going to start to either self-reject or reject you. So that's the best fuel to keep doing what you love, and then you can be that generous heart opening for others. But if you don't do what you love, there's like not anything, there's no buffer, there's nothing to give, there's nothing to serve with, because you're not even serving yourself in your own heart.
Yeah, only you can open your heart too. Don't look for love and romance and belonging and acceptance in other people to help you soften your heart or open your heart. It's all on you to be the one to have that epiphany and open that heart, have that heart opening through your own love to yourself. Something has to give, some wall has to come down. Just to recap for the lover, so the highest expression of the lover is it wants to experience trust. And in that expression, it's going to fill the role of the nurturer. When it's in the shadow expression, it's going to experience anxiety. And it's going to fill the role of the convincer, or it's called the politician, but we've been using the term convincer. So it's going to try to convince you, because it feels that anxiety of like, it's closing and you're not opening, and there's a lot of anxiety around this. I just want to be open. So let me convince you to let all the walls come down. Yes. And so, man, these days are kind of flying by. So we went through 4 archetypes. We only have 2 more archetypes left. And I wouldn't say we're saving the best for last, because they're all amazing and they all build on each other. Without the 1, we wouldn't have the 3. Without, it's a progression. It layers. And each one of them is valuable and beautiful. And the more you can open your heart to accepting each of these individually, the more you're going to start accepting parts of you, because you're all part of this. So before we did this series, I was like, oh my gosh, the 3rd line, I can't stand the 3rd line, this trial and error and falling down, and like, I don't want to do this anymore. But when we started to bring it through, and like, oh, it's the dynamo, and it's fine, it feels so good. And I feel like part of it, like I've healed that part of me that was like, I was rejecting and saying, oh my God, we're not going to deal with you. You keep falling down. Like, get with the program here. Why do you keep falling down? It's like, no, have a little bit of compassion for the dynamo. It's figuring it out. So I love it. I love what this is opening up in me. And I hope that it's opening up something in you. I'd love to know, did you resonate with the lover archetype? Do you feel like you can see that in yourself or in other people? I want to know what shifted for you in hearing these different perspectives, because we try to bring it into different wording, into different verbiage, so that you're hearing it from a different way, a different angle, and so that you can start recognizing these archetypes in other people and in yourself, so that you can shift and bring it in. It's all about, we want to bring everything into the heart. It's like, let's just bring it all here, bring it in, let's give ourselves a big hug, give everybody a hug. So that's what we hope to do, is to bring you into union within yourself, so that you can experience union in your relationship. That's the ultimate goal, is if you work with them enough, you're going to start accepting yourself more and more and more, and be very empowered in being able to get your truth across and not be misunderstood, and have this dream for the future, and work towards co-creating that dream with other people. Right? Because you're not here to do it all on your own. You can't be resigned to yourself and live a hermit life. I mean, you can, it's always your choice, but it's really just about like including the other. Are you empowered, and how are you going to share that empowerment? Because the world needs to be empowered. The world needs to be independent, so then we can be interdependent again. We've gotten so used to being interdependent and dependent on other people to take care of us that now nobody knows how to take care of themselves. They want other people to save them and do things for them. And I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent, but it's needed. So if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. We'll come back to this later. We look forward to you guys jumping on day 5, where we're going to meet the 5th archetype. Super exciting. And stay tuned too till the end, because we've got a lot of stuff coming on day 6 as well. It's going to be really, really important once we have all these archetypes and we've collected them, gathered them at the table. It's like, what do we do with them now? Where do we go from here? So we definitely have some next steps for you. If you're really enjoying this and liking like what we're bringing to the table, we'd love to have you and include you in our journey. But for now, if you are not registered, bit.ly/venuswork, VENUS work, and you can get the emails, the replays, the workbooks, everything, and stay in contact with us during this series. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and we're super grateful for you being here and being committed and dedicated to this. So thank you so much.